Now, all that traveling has caused a big problem.
In 2002, when Dr. Phil McGraw launched his daytime talk show, it was sold as a place for answers. Real people showed up with real problems, and Dr. Phil positioned himself as the man who could cut through the noise and tell you exactly where things went wrong. Week after week, viewers watched him take control of the room. He guided the conversation. He decided which details mattered and which ones didn't. He shaped the story in real time and delivered a conclusion that felt final. On that stage, Dr. Phil didn't just offer solutions. He controlled the narrative. For years, that authority went largely unquestioned. Until now. The man who built his entire brand on accountability is suddenly facing questions of his own. So what changed? And how did the person everyone once came to for answers end up on the other side of the spotlight? Stay with us as we get into all the details. How Dr. Phil was built. Phil McGraw was born Philip Calvin McGraw on September 1st, 1950, in Vinita, Oklahoma, long before daytime television ever gave him a chair to rule from. He was raised in a tight household with 3 sisters, shaped early by discipline, routine, and the steady grind of work. His father, Joseph J. McGraw, Jr., made a living supplying equipment to the oil fields of North Texas. And that environment mattered. It was practical, noisy, unforgiving. Problems didn't linger there. They were fixed, or they got worse. By 13, Phil was already working. First at an A&W root beer stand, then at a local pizza planet in Oklahoma City. Nothing glamorous, just clocking in, learning how systems run, and learning how people behave when they're tired, hungry, or impatient. Those years weren't about psychology yet. They were about observation. The family later moved to Kansas after his father decided to chase a long-held goal of becoming a psychologist himself. That move changed the trajectory. Phil attended Shawnee Mission North High School in Overland Park, where structure came in a different form. Football, discipline, hierarchy. He played linebacker, a position that demands awareness, control, and the ability to read what's coming before it hits you. In 1968, that role earned him a football scholarship to the University of Tulsa, where he played middle linebacker under Coach Glenn Dobbs. It was another system, another chain of command. But football didn't last forever. He eventually transferred to Midwestern State University in Wichita Falls, Texas. And this is where things quietly pivoted. In 1975, he graduated with a bachelor's degree in psychology. From there, he stayed locked in. A master's degree in experimental psychology followed in 1976, then a PhD in clinical psychology in 1979, both from North Texas State University, now known as the University of North Texas. His doctoral dissertation focused on rheumatoid arthritis and psychological intervention, already hinting at a belief that behavior, mindset, and control mattered more than people liked to admit. He went on to complete a year of postdoctoral training in forensic psychology at the Wilmington Institute, moving closer to the worlds of evaluation, judgment, and consequence. His doctoral advisor during that time was Frank Lawless, a relationship that would later resurface in a much more public way. Long before the cameras, before the catchphrases, before the audience applause, this was the foundation. Work, systems, discipline, and an increasing comfort with stepping into the role of the evaluator. Someone who didn't just listen, but decided what mattered. Someone who believed conclusions should feel final. And that mindset didn't disappear when fame arrived. How Dr. Phil turned influence into an empire. After earning his doctorate, Phil McGraw didn't head straight for television. He went back to Wichita Falls, Texas, and rejoined his father's private psychology practice. It was a return to familiar ground, but it didn't stay small for long. Phil wasn't just interested in listening to problems. He was interested in structure, in leverage, in what actually moved people. By the mid-1980s, that instinct was already pushing him beyond traditional therapy. In 1985, he and his father partnered with Texas businesswoman Thelma Box to present Pathways self-help seminars. These weren't the average clinical sessions. They were packaged, marketed, scaled. 6 years later, in October 1991, Phil sold his stake in the company for $325,000 and walked away. Around the same time, he was building something far more consequential. In 1990, McGraw co-founded Courtroom Sciences, Inc., known as CSI, alongside attorney Gary Dobbs. The firm specialized in trial consulting, running mock juries and simulated courtrooms to test legal strategies before they ever reached a real judge. McGraw's role was precise. He evaluated what worked, what failed, and why certain arguments landed while others collapsed. It wasn't about sympathy, it was about persuasion, control, outcome. That work placed him directly in the path of power. Through CSI, McGraw began working with Oprah Winfrey in 1995, when she hired the firm to prepare for her high-profile Amarillo, Texas beef trial. The case dragged on until 1998, but when it ended in her favor, Winfrey publicly credited McGraw. The relationship didn't end there. Soon after, she invited him onto her show, and the audiences loved him. By April 1998, McGraw had a standing weekly slot on Tuesdays as a relationship and life strategy expert. The transition from consultant to television presence was seamless because the core skill stayed the same. He framed the problem, he guided the narrative, and he delivered a verdict. In September 2002, he made the shift official. McGraw formed Pitesky Productions and launched Dr. Phil, produced by Harpo Studios. The format was simple but firm. One topic per episode. One authority in the room. He signed a lucrative syndication deal with King World Productions that paid him $15 million a year and kept the show running through the 2013 to 2014 season. The numbers followed. In 2007, he landed on the Forbes Celebrity 100 list. That same year, Nielsen ranked Dr. Phil fourth among talk shows with nearly 6.7 million viewers. Even as ratings dipped slightly the following year, the show remained second only to The Oprah Winfrey Show. By December 2018, Dr. Phil was the top syndicated talk show in the country for 117 consecutive weeks. By 2020, McGraw had climbed to 22nd on Forbes with reported earnings of $65.5 million. The influence didn't stop with one show. In 2005, Phil and his eldest son, Jay, launched Stage 29 Productions, immediately signaling that this was becoming a family operation. Some projects fizzled, like Moochers. Others drew attention for different reasons, including Dr. Phil House, which was shut down after neighborhood protests and quietly moved to a studio lot. More spin-offs followed. Decision House aired briefly in 2007. Then came The Doctors, launched in 2008, which ran for 14 seasons and won a Daytime Emmy. Daily Mail TV added another Emmy to the tally in 2019. Even in 2021, McGraw returned to primetime reality television with House Calls with Dr. Phil, though it ended after just 6 episodes. By that point, the pattern was locked in. Phil McGraw wasn't just hosting shows, he was stepping into people's lives, breaking down their relationships, their failures, and their marriages, and delivering conclusions that felt final. Week after week, he told others where things went wrong and how they should have done it differently, which makes the next question unavoidable. If he spent decades dissecting everyone else's marriage, what did his own really look like? The strange truth about Dr. Phil's marriage. On television, Phil McGraw has coached countless couples through betrayal, resentment, distance, and emotional collapse. He's built a career explaining what healthy marriages look like and where others go wrong, which naturally raises the question people rarely ask out loud. If anyone should have a flawless relationship, shouldn't it be him? The reality, though, is more complicated. Phil has been married to Robin McGraw since 1976. Together, they've built a long life that includes 2 sons, Jay and Jordan, 4 grandchildren, and a public image rooted in loyalty and stability. From the outside, their bond looks unshakable. But time hasn't shielded the marriage from persistent rumors, and when you look closer, there are details that don't quite fit the picture-perfect narrative. Over the years, divorce speculation has followed them relentlessly. Yet the marriage has held. In a 2018 Us Weekly interview, Phil made it clear that separation had never been part of their story, emphasizing that they had never lived apart and that divorce had never even been spoken about in their home. Still, whispers haven't gone away. Between infidelity rumors, their refusal to spend time apart, and habits that fall far outside what most couples consider normal, the relationship carries a few unsettling contradictions. Part of the suspicion traces back to Phil's past. Robin was not his first wife. He married Debbie Higgins McCall in 1970, and the marriage ended just 3 years later. According to McCall, the split came down to infidelity. For years, she avoided sharing her side of the story, believing there was nothing to gain from revisiting it as Phil's fame grew. When he eventually acknowledged the divorce publicly, she explained that every relationship has 2 sides and revealed that she had confronted him about multiple affairs. In her account, he didn't deny the accusations and dismissed them as something she needed to accept, insisting they had nothing to do with how he felt about her. Just 3 years after that divorce, Phil married Robin. From there, rumors followed the new marriage as well. Among the most disturbing was an allegation of an affair in 1988 involving a former therapy patient who was only 19 at the time. None of this was ever proven, but the optics were hard to ignore. A man who regularly dissected infidelity on national television was now surrounded by accusations of his own, and the timeline only added fuel to the skepticism. Then there was the book that never came out. Both Phil and Robin have written multiple books, but in 2009, reports surfaced that Robin was preparing a tell-all memoir. Publicly, Phil always appeared supportive of her ambitions, but behind the scenes, gossip suggested something very different. A source close to the couple claimed their marriage had already been unstable and that Phil feared the memoir could push it past the breaking point. According to that same account, he felt betrayed and powerless, worried that stopping the book outright might cost him the marriage. The rumors went further. The source alleged that Phil attempted to persuade Robin to abandon the memoir by offering what he reportedly referred to as crazy money, framing it as a decision that would protect their relationship. The book was never released, and whether any of those claims were true remains unclear. What lingered was the silence. No memoir, no clarification. Just another unanswered question layered onto the marriage. But if there is one thing the couple has never been vague about, it is their refusal to spend time apart. Nearly 50 years into marriage, they still limit their separation to no more than 2 or 3 days. Even when work puts them in different cities, they stay connected constantly. Phil once described how Robin would FaceTime him before bed, even if it meant calling at 3 in the morning her time, explaining that she didn't like falling asleep without him there. That closeness goes beyond words. During an episode of Dr. Phil, Robin sat in the audience while Phil spoke directly to her, recalling a phrase she often repeated. She jumped in with a laugh, saying that if he ever left her, she would be going with him. The moment was lighthearted, but it reinforced a pattern. Independence has never been part of their formula. That dynamic extends into their work lives as well. Dr. Phil ran for 21 years, and Robin attended every single taping. Not occasionally, every day. Phil later explained that they went to work together because Robin had been present at every show from the beginning, describing her as a crucial part of the brand and a grounding force, especially given that most of the audience was female. Robin explained how it started. When the show premiered in 2002, she was a stay-at-home mother. After the first episode wrapped, Phil casually asked her what she thought, unaware the cameras were still rolling. As they talked and walked off together, producers reportedly told her that they had just seen the real Phil. From that moment on, she was asked to be there daily, and she was. Even their idea of a date night feels slightly offbeat. After decades together, they've settled into routines that keep things lively in their own way. One of their shared obsessions is pinball. Phil once admitted that they sneak out at night to play when they should already be asleep, sometimes staying up until 2 or 3 in the morning. He described trash-talking matches where Robin would deliberately block his view of the flippers. Robin acknowledged that what usually starts as 1 or 2 games often turns into 10 or 15, laughing at how competitive it gets. On the surface, it sounds playful, harmless, but taken together, the patterns stand out. The constant proximity, the blurred line between work and marriage, the unanswered rumors that never quite disappear. For a relationship that's lasted nearly half a century, the story isn't about collapse. It's about control, closeness, and a version of marriage that works for them, even if it leaves outsiders quietly uneasy. And that unease doesn't stop at his marriage. Behind the applause, the controversies that follow. Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil can be very entertaining, but it can also be deeply unsettling once you step away from the audience's applause and look at what's been alleged behind the scenes. Over the years, a growing list of accusations, lawsuits, and expert criticism has chipped away at the image of authority that Phil McGraw built so carefully on screen. For some former staff members, the show wasn't just intense, it was hostile. In 2016, a former employee, Leah Rothman, sued McGraw for false imprisonment and wrongful termination. According to her lawsuit, tensions exploded after information was allegedly leaked to the press. She described being locked in a meeting with other employees, while McGraw screamed profanities and issued threats, warning that if anyone crossed him, he would retaliate. When Rothman later went to Human Resources to report the incident, she claimed HR sided with McGraw. She described being forced out of her job, a situation that ultimately led to legal action. Then there's the way guests are found. Within the industry, it's often referred to as chasing, not literal pursuit, but something more calculated. Allegations suggest that producers actively search for the most tragic, volatile, and emotionally raw stories online, persuading deeply troubled people and their families to appear on the show. Critics argue that mental illness is treated less like something to be handled with care and more like a ratings engine. Dr. Jeff Sugar, an assistant professor of clinical psychiatry at the University of Southern California, described these tactics as callous and inexcusable, arguing that the show demonstrates a willingness to sink to any level if it means boosting viewership. The business side of the brand hasn't escaped scrutiny either. In 2003, McGraw launched a weight loss program that raised immediate red flags. The supplements cost around $120 a month and were promoted heavily on the show, often by his own family members. Experts quickly dismissed the program as unscientific, and an investigation by the Federal Trade Commission followed. Lawsuits piled up from customers who felt misled, and the matter was eventually resolved with a $10.5 million class action settlement. The program quietly disappeared. Criticism of McGraw's professional credibility has been just as sharp. While he presents himself as an authority figure, many experts have questioned his methods outright. The National Alliance on Mental Illness publicly condemned his approach, labeling it unethical and irresponsible. They accused him of breaching professional ethics by making sweeping psychological claims without proper evaluation. One particularly explosive moment involved a troubled child being compared on air to serial killers like Jeffrey Dahmer, a characterization that drew fierce backlash and further damaged his standing among mental health professionals. His credentials themselves have also been a point of contention. In 2006, McGraw surrendered his psychology license in Texas following a string of ethical controversies, including an earlier disciplinary action tied to hiring a former patient. He does not currently hold a license to practice psychology. In California, practicing without a license would be a felony, but the show sidesteps this by requiring guests to sign extensive paperwork stating that they are receiving advice, not psychological treatment. Legal trouble has followed him into the courtroom as well. One of the most high-profile cases involved the disappearance of Natalie Holloway in 2005. During coverage of the case, the show aired a segment involving Deepak and Satish Kalpo, who were among the last people seen with Holloway. Although never charged due to lack of evidence, the brothers later sued for defamation, claiming the segment had been manipulated and edited to misrepresent their words as factual admissions. The lawsuit was dismissed just a week before trial. Holloway was declared legally dead in 2012, and the case remains unsolved. In another incident that drew widespread outrage, a producer for the show bailed teenager Mercedes Nichols out of jail in 2008 for $30,000. Nichols had been arrested alongside others for a brutal assault that was filmed. Public backlash forced the show to drop her appearance. A spokesperson later acknowledged that staff members had gone beyond the show's guidelines and claimed internal discussions followed. No further consequences were publicly disclosed. McGraw's handling of celebrities struggling with mental illness has sparked some of the harshest criticism. When Britney Spears was hospitalized at Cedars-Sinai, McGraw appeared at her room, later stating that her family had requested his involvement. Spears herself reportedly did not consent, and after McGraw spoke publicly about her condition, her family distanced themselves from him. Plans to tape a related episode were quietly abandoned. Years later, his interview with Shelley Duvall reignited backlash. Viewers and critics alike described the segment as uncomfortable and exploitative, with public figures condemning it as cruel and shameless. Perhaps most disturbing are allegations that the show has enabled addicts rather than helped them. In 2017, a joint investigation by STAT and the Boston Globe detailed complaints from multiple former guests. One alcoholic guest described arriving sober only to be provided with vodka and Xanax backstage. Another guest, Caitlin, was pregnant and suffering heroin withdrawal during filming. Her mother reportedly sought help, only to learn that a producer had allegedly taken Caitlin to Skid Row to obtain drugs. Later, the mother was reprimanded on air for enabling her daughter. And then there are the lawsuits. Many of them. From defamation claims to bizarre allegations of captivity and misconduct, the legal trail is long. One plaintiff accused McGraw of holding her against her will and subjecting her to degrading treatment. In another case, McGraw and his wife were sued by a friend after their dog attacked and injured her. A memorabilia dealer also sued after promotional footage labeled him the ringleader of a crime using edited clips that appeared to show agreement. Individually, each controversy raises questions. Together, they form a pattern. A show built on judgment, a brand powered by confrontation, and a man who made a career out of holding others accountable is now surrounded by accusations that refuse to stay off stage. Why things aren't looking good for Dr. Phil. Lately, things have not been looking good for Dr. Phil, and it all started from the very moment that the cameras stopped rolling. In 2023, CBS Media Ventures announced that Dr. Phil would officially come to an end after 21 seasons. The explanation given sounded measured and deliberate. The network pointed to McGraw's desire to explore new ventures, framing the decision as a voluntary shift away from daytime television rather than a forced exit. According to CBS, McGraw was ready to move on to projects that better aligned with his interests and passions. McGraw reinforced that message himself. He described feeling compelled to engage with a broader audience, citing what he described as grave concerns for the American family. In his words, the goal was to help restore clarity of purpose and protect core values. The language was heavy, purpose-driven, almost urgent. This wasn't presented as retirement. It was positioned as a calling. Almost immediately, rumors tried to fill the silence. One of the loudest claimed that Robin McGraw was somehow responsible for the show's cancellation. That theory never held weight. There were no signs of marital discord, no fractures, no public distancing. Robin had consistently supported McGraw's career for decades, and nothing suggested that had changed. The explanation McGraw gave pointed elsewhere: a shift in platform, a belief that network television was no longer the best place to reach the audience he wanted. And that part tracks. As traditional network TV continues to lose ground to streaming and niche platforms, McGraw appeared convinced that influence now lives elsewhere. After Dr. Phil ended, Robin remained active, though noticeably quieter. Her podcast, I've Got a Secret, with Robin McGraw, which launched in 2021, focused on personal growth, emotional well-being, and intimate conversations. New episodes slowed, then stopped entirely, with the last one airing in February 2023. No announcement, no farewell, just silence. Behind the scenes, however, a much bigger gamble was already unfolding. In November 2023, McGraw announced a new Fort Worth-based venture called Merit Street Media. The name was intentional, drawn from ideas of meritocracy and what McGraw described as Main Street America. The project wasn't just another show. It was a full-fledged television network paired with a streaming service called Merit Plus. At its center sat Dr. Phil Primetime, a rebranded continuation of the very format he claimed to be leaving behind. McGraw explained that he still loved talking to real people about real problems, especially those actively looking for solutions rather than simply complaining. He again emphasized that American families and core values were under attack. That framing didn't go unnoticed. Media outlets quickly suggested that Merit Street's programming would lean more heavily into McGraw's conservative worldview. To run the operation, McGraw tapped Joel Cheatwood as Chief Operating Officer. Cheatwood was no stranger to controversy, known for shaping tabloid-style news formats, developing Glenn Beck's show for Fox News, and overseeing The Blaze in its early days. Several staff members from Dr. Phil relocated to Texas to help launch the new network. McGraw soon announced distribution plans across linear television and streaming platforms, claiming commitments that would place Merit Street in more than 65 million television homes. One of the most significant partnerships came with Trinity Broadcasting Network. While McGraw stressed that Merit Street would not be faith-based, the deal gave TBN a controlling equity stake in the company in exchange for national distribution and production resources. From the outside, it looked like momentum. More big names followed. Nancy Grace joined in February 2024 to host a true crime program. A month later, Steve Harvey acquired an equity stake, with plans to develop talent and programming. Chris Harrison also signed an overall deal to create new content, including a reality dating show with his wife, Lauren Zima. Merit Street officially launched on April 2nd, 2024. Then the problems started showing. By August 2024, roughly 40 employees, nearly 30% of the workforce, were laid off as part of what the company described as departmental consolidations. Many were terminated without explanation or severance, a move largely attributed to Texas being a right-to-work state. Leadership framed it as restructuring. For staff, it felt abrupt and final. trouble continued to ripple outward. Ken Solomon, former CEO of Tennis Channel and an advisor on Merit Street's board, was reportedly fired from his role at Tennis Channel in September 2024, with ownership citing his involvement in Merit Street as a growing distraction. Despite that, expansion plans pressed on. In February 2025, Merit Street announced a partnership with Canada's MCA Media Group to launch Merit TV Canada, extending the brand internationally. But behind the announcements, the numbers weren't moving. Viewership failed to gain traction. Average primetime audiences hovered around 27,000 in 2024, then dropped to just 17,000 by the second quarter of 2025. The reach McGraw had once commanded on daytime television simply wasn't following him to his new platform. On July 2, 2025, the situation turned intense. Merit Street Media filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, listing assets and liabilities between $100 million and $500 million. The company simultaneously filed a lawsuit against TBN, accusing the broadcaster of breaching contract terms, failing to provide promised national distribution, and abusing its power as a controlling shareholder to enrich itself at Merit Street's expense. Production of first-run programming was suspended. Reruns filled the gaps. Just days later, McGraw announced yet another new venture, Envoy Media, based in Dallas. The concept centered on live news, original entertainment, immersive viewer experiences, and citizen journalism, with content expected from McGraw himself and Steve Harvey. It sounded ambitious, familiar even, but the legal tide didn't turn. On October 28, 2025, a bankruptcy judge ordered Merit Street's case to be converted to a Chapter 7 liquidation, concluding that creditors would be better served by selling off the company's assets under an independent trustee. Merit Street had launched with big promises: influence, reach, a bigger audience. But what followed instead were layoffs, lawsuits, collapsing viewership, and liquidation. What are your thoughts on the Dr. Phil Show? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.